Hey guys, and welcome back to the Aspire podcast. So we've just had our Bali retreat last week where a few of our clients flew over into Bali to basically spend a week together. We did a lot of breath work, a lot of inner work, journaling, reflecting on our lives, how we want our life to go. We also opened up a lot in terms of, childhood traumas, insecurities around our body and also our upbringings. And something that came up quite often was actually how our upbringing and standards in society and in Asian culture actually impacted our own fitness journeys and how we felt about ourselves. Now, I thought that this would be a really interesting topic to actually discuss on the podcast. And if any of you guys have resonated or maybe felt like you grew up where you had a lot of comments being made by your relatives, people who were actually really close to you, that affected how you felt about your own body, that you'll find yourself actually feeling less alone in this when I do share this. So for those, firstly, who don't know me very well, I was born in New Zealand, Auckland. My parents are Chinese, so I very much had sort of the Western influence and obviously the Western sort of expectations and standards around beauty thrown at me, but also very much was influenced by my Asian upbringing and my parents and their beauty standards, especially, the comments that my mom or my grandma would make when growing up. Now, obviously, with those two different expectations, it can lead to a lot of sort of insecurities around your own body. And obviously, when you're a lot younger as well, it can lead you to pretty much feeling quite insecure in your own skin. Now, for those of you guys who perhaps aren't familiar with Asian culture and beauty standards in Asian society, it's always about just being smaller and a more petite version of yourself. In Asian culture, you're also often complimented when you lose weight, when you look smaller, when you're more petite. And Asian relatives are very, very open with what they say to you. They're very blunt, and it's always out of love, but it's not always taken the best, especially when it's comments made on your body that aren't exactly conducive towards you feeling confident and secure within yourself. This can often look like, seeing a relative that you haven't seen for a while, and the first thing they say is, oh, it looks like you've gained weight. Oh, your legs are a bit bigger. Oh, your clothes are fitting a bit tighter. It's always those comments that they always bring up first, and that can be really triggering. But in their minds, they don't realize the impact it's going to make, and they really genuinely mean it out of love, which can be hard to understand and relate with if you perhaps are brought up in a different culture where, they're more aware to not make comments about someone's body, right? I remember being told so many times by my mom growing up that I had big legs. I had big quads. I was quad dominant, to wear a dress to cover my quads, to not wear jeans or anything tight because it just accentuated how big my quads were compared to my calves. And obviously growing up as a girl who obviously cared about what her parents would say, how she looked in a dress, in jeans, it made me really, really insecure. And I honestly grew up hating my legs. I never really wore jeans. I didn't even own jeans. I wore leggings, but I just always felt so uncomfortable in my own skin. And it was genuinely because I was constantly fed these comments from my mom, but it was always out of love from her end. But obviously she didn't really realize the impact that it was making on my own body image and my self-esteem. Now, another massive challenge that I know a lot of Asian kids will have, and one that I personally experienced too, was that in Asian culture, we bond over food. Food is incredible. It brings us all together. So there's a big emphasis on eating. And now when you combine that with perhaps comments that your parents are making about your body, the fact that you've gained weight, or perhaps the fact that your clothes are a bit too tight or your legs are a bit big, and then they're also trying to shove down more food down you, and they're trying to cook all this amazing food for you because that's how they show their love. It can be really triggering, right? Because often when we aren't secure with our own bodies, when we feel like we're really big and we want to lose weight, that's often associated with then perhaps having a negative relationship with food, maybe some anxiety around it as well. And so when they make those comments and then they celebrate you for coming back home or seeing you again by wanting to feed you, it can lead to obviously a lot of overwhelm, a lot of anxiety as well. And it's something that's very commonly spoken about with our clients, because a lot of our clients are Asian Americans or Asians who have grown up in different Western societies, right? Very similar to me. So it's a common challenge that many of us do face. And obviously that affects our fitness journey and how we, look at our own progress and the goals that we set for ourselves. So this was definitely a shared experience that we spoke about on our last Bali retreat. And it was so beautiful seeing these women open up. Some of them are mothers who were like, this is the first time that I've been able to speak about this to anyone. And the fact that I've just met you girls and I feel so safe to open up, it was probably the most like fulfilling moments in my life, and it really just reminded me this is why I do what I do, to connect like-minded women, to share our own experiences, to talk about things that perhaps we're too afraid to speak with our parents about or our friends, or we just never felt like we had a safe space to speak about. And it was quite funny because one of our clients actually, she was like, you know what, whilst my parents have been very blunt and always comment on my weight, I actually did stay with you for even longer, and I'm still with you now because I know that what you're doing is working, because sometimes it's hard for me to see my own progress because I see myself every single day. But I saw my mom after a year of working with you, and the first thing she said was like, oh my God, you have lost weight. You look incredible. What have you been doing? You've been doing something. And so that allowed her to recognize, oh, I have been making progress, because I know that my mom is going to be so honest and blunt with me. So if I've lost weight, she's going to tell me. If I've gained weight, she's going to tell me. And that's why I'm going to stay with you, Ching, because I have lost weight, and enough for my mom to be like, whoa. So I guess that's a positive. But, in general, like we were speaking a lot about, our upbringings and how Asian beauty standards and culture and relatives and their comments have impacted us and our fitness journeys even to this day. Now, it's also really common to hear a lot of my clients speak about how they're going back home and it's been a few years and they're actually feeling a bit anxious because they know the first thing that their relatives are going to comment on is their body, and how they look. And it's one of those things that can be really triggering, and it can bring back a lot of old memories. And especially when you've been working so hard on yourself, on your fitness journey, to focus on being stronger and healthier and not just the smallest version of yourself, it can be really triggering when you go back into that environment, and you hear those comments again, right? And so again, this is something that we speak a lot about with our clients, and it's something that I want to open up with you guys as well. And I want to share with you guys some of my top tips and things that have really personally helped me, but also things that we share with our clients to help them on their journey. Because look, you don't want to live your whole life trying to please others. You don't want to be living your whole life trying to fit your body into this ideal beauty standard of a culture or society that actually doesn't benefit you, that perhaps you don't actually align with. Living your whole life just to hear maybe your mom tell you that you finally look good, or, you're finally losing the weight that you feel you need to lose, when actually the happiest version and the healthiest version of yourself isn't that smaller version. And in fact, it's that stronger version that you've been working on, right? So here are my top 3 tips and reminders that I hope you can take away with you if you have grown up in a society, in a culture that has always pushed you need to be smaller, and lose weight. Number 1 is, please remember that Asian beauty standards are always going to celebrate the smaller version of you. Now, you can either dedicate the rest of your life towards trying to please those Asian beauty standards and perhaps your relatives who have grown up in a very different culture and completely restrict the way you live, your health, and your happiness. Or you can be the change, and you can dedicate the rest of your life towards being the strongest and the healthiest version of you. Number 2 is to remember that your parents and your grandparents grew up in a very different society and culture. Their idea of health and beauty is going to be so different to the society that you are now growing up in. They didn't grow up in a society that recognized how important it is for women to strength train and to get stronger and to lift weights, right? But they grew up in a society that feared it. And so obviously their comments are going to be towards, oh, don't get too bulky, don't lift too much. They're still fearful around that. And something to remember is that they may never understand the challenges that you have with your body. They may never understand the benefits of you lifting weights and how you feel getting stronger. And that is okay. It's not your job to get them to understand. Finally, open communication is going to go such a long way. Now, your relatives and your parents may never understand truthfully how you feel, but if you can just let them know that their comments aren't really appreciated, when they comment on your body, perhaps it makes you feel a bit insecure and it doesn't make you feel too great, it's going to give you some sense of closure, and it's going to enable you just to recognize that, hey, you've done your part, and that's all you can do. Now, personally, I had this open conversation with my mom just last year, and she honestly didn't realize the impact it had made on my upbringing and my childhood and my insecurities when she made those comments about my legs or about my body. And, truthfully, she came from a place of love. But by being able to have that open communication really got her to actually understand where I was coming from and the impact that those small passing comments can make. And it's also allowed her now to be more conscious of the words that she uses and the things that she speaks about with my sister, who's a lot younger and still growing up and probably going through that stage where she's being a bit more aware and conscious of her own body. Now, it's crazy to think I've gotten to a point where I actually just want to get stronger and build more muscle and become the healthiest version of myself, not the smallest version of myself, but it did take a very long time. And I'd be lying to say, that my biggest insecurity weren't my legs. And I'd be lying to say that, I wasn't scared for the first half of my fitness journey when I started lifting, because I didn't want to get too bulky, because that's the only thing that I was fed and taught. Even when I started going to the gym, my mom was like, oh, don't train your legs, don't squat too much, because I heard it would make your legs even bigger. So it did take a very long time to, emotionally detach myself from her comments, and to really just appreciate that she grew up in a very different society with different beauty standards, and that is okay. Her beliefs are valid, but my own beliefs are also valid, and it's important that you are also living in alignment with how you want to feel, with how you want to look, not with what your parents are saying, what your relatives are saying. Striving to become the strongest and the healthiest version of you is the best thing that you can do for yourself. Now, look, for some, that could be actually putting on weight, and for others, it could be losing weight to become a healthier version of yourself. Regardless of what it looks like for you, just always make sure that you are living in alignment with how you want to best feel, not by the pressures of what society is placing upon you. Now, I would love to know if this resonated with you, if you were brought up in a similar sort of culture where perhaps your relatives and your parents did make quite a lot of comments about your body that obviously weren't very beneficial towards you building confidence and actually feeling really comfortable in your own skin. I'd love to know your experiences. Drop them in the comments below if you are watching over on YouTube, just because I feel like the more that we can open up about these discussions and share our own experiences, the more of us are going to realize that, hey, we're all in a very similar boat. We're not alone in how we're feeling, and we're also not alone in the impacts that perhaps the closest people in our lives have made on us regarding our body and our confidence and our self-esteem and even our health on this fitness journey of ours. Other than that, I hope you really enjoy this episode. I really hope that it could just, help you feel less alone, and to just remind you that, hey, if you're on a fitness journey right now and you're striving to become that confident version of you, that stronger version of you, keep going regardless of what other people are saying, okay? They won't understand, and that's okay. You are living for yourself. You are living to become the most empowered and happy version of you. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what that looks like to others. It only matters what that looks like and feels like to you.